The British government is making a dramatic U-turn. It's announced changes to its mini-budget, which it disclosed just 10 days ago. Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng is reversing the proposed scrapping of the top rate of income tax. The announcement of billions of dollars of unfunded tax cuts sent financial markets into a spin, with the pound reaching record lows against the dollar.
I know the plan put forward only 10 days ago has caused a little turbulence. I get it. We are listening and have listened. And now I want to focus on delivering the major parts of our growth package. Because with energy bills skyrocketing, a painful COVID aftermath, war on our continent, a 70-year high tax burden, slowing global growth rates, and glacially slow infrastructure delivery, we couldn't simply do nothing. We can't sit idly by. What Britain needs more than ever is economic growth.
British Chancellor of the Exchequer there. Well, for more on this government U-turn, let's speak with Arise business analyst Bode Oshosami, who joins us from London. Good to see you, Bode. So the British Finance Minister, Chancellor Kwarteng, forced into what some have called a humiliating U-turn. Just earlier, we saw the Prime Minister saying she would not reverse that policy. What has forced this change?
Well, I suspect this must have been the party leaders that, of course, had already expressed concerns about the fact that this wasn't very, very popular, even though many other aspects of the plan had more financial implication. There were three main issues with this mini budget. One, of course, is the worsening inequality that many implied it would result in, even though in the US, the highest federal tax bracket is 37%. In Switzerland, it's 34%. In Germany, France, the highest tax rate is 45%. In Italy, it's 43%. So it's neither here nor there whether they go down from 45 to 40, which is above still the average. Fiscal affordability was another major issue. And of course, this was the big issue for markets. The crisis of confidence arising from fiscal affordability is obviously something that led to rising mortgages as gilt yields also went up. So my thinking is that the party leaders are more concerned about the optics, about the issues around the inequality. And I think they read the Riot Act to Truss last night, that they were not going to support people like Michael Gove, Grand Shaps. They said they were not going to support, and there was a mutiny that was already brewing in the Conservative Party ahead of this major event. So I think there was no choice. The other thing you must observe is that if you look at the list of measures, this was really the rabbit out of the hat. Nobody had seen or heard about this until the very day it was announced, which means that it may actually have been a straw man or something they just put in to see whether it would fly. And obviously didn't fly, more from an optics perspective. But I don't think it really changed much in terms of the fiscal issues and in terms of the market concerns.
But I mean, how much has a U-turn on this scale left the credibility of the Chancellor and the Prime Minister in tatters? Because, I mean, this was their big headline policy in that mini-budget, wasn't it?
Well, for them to make a change like this, I think definitely means they are listening, one. But it also means they didn't handle this properly, especially the communications. What many have said is that they should have done a better job of getting the Office of Budget and Responsibility to align with these plans, especially in printing out the assessments that normally come out with things of this nature. But we didn't get the OBR statement. Now we're hearing that it will not come out until November. Many see this as trying to hide something under the carpet, and obviously the fiscal issues came up, and markets immediately started diving for cover, and the pound started plunging. But obviously, if you are seeing a situation where the pound is plunging, the yields for gilts are going up, that means mortgages are going up, cost of borrowing is going up, people are beginning to panic, and of course, this is also impacting the polls. That means it was a blunder that they needed to address. And I think with fairness to Kwarteng, what they said is that the urgency forced them to move, and they were more concerned about alleviating the pains of the British people and getting growth back urgently. And maybe that was an excuse for not getting the OBR adequately aligned. But I think we should just wait and see what the OBR eventually has to say about these numbers from a fiscal perspective. And of course, the debt GDP ratios, how those will come down. Kwarteng has promised in his 5-year medium-term speech, which he said is coming out in November, he will be able to show that over 5 years, a lot of the concerns on debt would have been addressed. But 5 years is a long time, anything can happen.
And I mean, as you mentioned there, they said they listened to what people were saying. I mean, you touched on this briefly earlier, Bode, but I mean, is this going to reassure the markets and the voters, or do both the markets and the voters have a problem taking them seriously? And the lack of faith in Liz Truss, for example, is now, as someone suggested, unrecoverable.
Well, I think faith in Liz Truss is unrecoverable. I think definitely they have learned a lesson or two. As far as markets are concerned, after the speech, we saw the pound gaining a bit and the yields coming down, suggesting the direction is in the right place. The markets are a bit more comfortable. But just like I said, if you look at the cost implications, the fiscal implications of this 45p tax cut reversal, it's almost negligible, about £2 billion out of an £800 billion budget. It's nothing. So it doesn't, it's a drop in the bucket as far as the fiscal, the debt issues that were concerning markets are concerned. But I think the assurance that he kept reiterating that fiscal accountability, fiscal responsibility, that they were going to be fiscally disciplined and that they were going to convince and present something that is coherent and that is acceptable from a fiscal perspective, of course, in November 23rd, which is quite a bit. But I think that may have convinced markets a bit. But like the Bank of England said, there's really nothing you can say when you haven't seen the detailed numbers, although markets are absolutely convinced this can be afforded. But of course, Kwarteng says it can, and he's going to prove it when the OBR and his medium-term statement is ready. But what happens before then is the question. I think that is anybody's guess.
Right, and just briefly, Bode, just looking at the reaction inside the Conservative Party, you mentioned their conference is ongoing. Party conferences, usually celebratory events. I wonder what this current one in Birmingham is like. I mean, a rather subdued affair, with some in despair, perhaps?
Well, it has to be subdued. If you look at where the UK is, the PMI numbers that came today was horrible. It's still 48.4. That's for the manufacturing PMIs. The polling was bad for the Conservatives. And of course, the other issue is the economy. The economy barely was able to report that they didn't go into recession in the last quarter. So it's all very negative. So my sense is they are fighting to stay in power, and they have only two years left. So it's a very sober, I would think it's a very sober mood, and they certainly need to find some very quick answers if indeed we're going to be seeing them after the next 2 years.
Bode, thanks very much indeed. Much appreciated. Bode Oshosemi is a RISE business analyst, and he was talking to me there from London.